Hey, Aaron from Finkdom. How I managed to learn each of the languages that I did learn. As usual, I want to connect with you guys. I'm interested in hearing from you, hearing where you are, where you're from, what language you're learning. Natalie A says, here I am trying to finish my French homework and waiting for this video. Please give us some tips for French language learners. All right, I will. As a matter of fact, I'm going to talk about my struggles with French, So anyways, I'm interested in hearing from you guys. I want to hear about your language learning. Specifically, since this live stream is all about sharing my story with language learning, I want to hear you guys' stories. What made you interested in learning languages? What struggles did you have learning your language? This is probably going to be a little bit longer, more relaxed live stream today. So, write out your story of how you came to start learning languages, why you're interested in learning languages, and then, I'll share some of my stories, and then once we get through that, I'll go back and read through some of you guys' stuff, and we can have a chat about that today. I had kind of a late start today. Here is this new mug that I made. I don't know if you can read it. It says, "Learn that language." So I'm working on getting a new line of merchandise ready. Some of it is already up there in the store on my website, but or on my YouTube channel. Not the mug yet, I don't think. Anyways, I also today brought my. Many of you know I'm an avid crocheter. So I thought today we're just going to kick back and share some stories. So I figured I'll take some time to relax and get a little bit of crocheting in while we talk here. So yeah. All right. So my language, someone brought this up actually in the comment of the community section on my YouTube, on my channel a few days ago. Hello, Ichu. Hello, Emmanuel. I'm doing well. He says, I'm looking forward to seeing how you learned Spanish. Good. Yeah. So that's what we're going to get right into that. I don't remember who brought this up. They said, hey, can you just share with us your story about how you started learning languages and how you learned the languages that you did? And I said, yeah, I think that's a great topic for a video. So I decided it's not really from one video. Hello, Anirut from Thailand. Sawadee ka. Can I speak Portuguese? No, I can't. Does your family share your passion for languages? No, they do not. I'm the only one. My wife is trying to learn French. She's not as into language learning as I am. And other than that, no one else in my family is interested in languages. So, yeah. So how did I get interested in languages? Well, I started when I was in middle school. I started very similar to the way many of you guys have been learning languages, and that is I just took a class. ¿Cómo estamos hoy? Yo empecé a aprender el español hace 16 años. I started learning Spanish in middle school when I was about 14 years old. I took a year-long class when I was in 8th grade. And didn't learn very much. And I specifically remember towards the end of my 8th grade year, I had been taking the Spanish class. Every day going in and taking Spanish with Senor Taylor, and he was a great teacher. Everyone loved Senor Taylor. But I didn't learn very much in that class because I'm a firm believer that classes are not where you learn languages. You learn language in the real world. You can learn some interesting grammar bits, and you can learn some cultural insights and stuff like that in the classroom. But it's just not a realistic method for learning languages to fluency. Yeah, people are interested in my crocheting, I have an Instagram that's dedicated to crochet. I actually made all the little things in the background here. And normally I'd rather focus on talking to you guys, but today is more of a story time chat. So I thought taking a load off, relaxing, and crocheting while I talk to you guys would be appropriate. This is eventually going to be a hat. I'm going to wrap it around. It's only about a quarter of the way. It's going to be a cold weather hat. I live in Wisconsin, we get some brutal winters up here. Saluton, kiel vi fartas? Mi fartas bone, dankon. Llevas un rato hablando entonces. Qué bien. Yeah. Which resources do you use for Spanish? ¿Por qué estás cosiendo? Yeah, I'll get into all that. I'm actually not sewing. This is crocheting. I think in Spanish that's tejer, tejiendo. Chune, like verdad, right? So anyways, I started learning Spanish in middle school. And I distinctly remember at the end of my first year learning Spanish, I thought to myself, you know what? I've been learning Spanish for an entire year. I learned how to conjugate verbs. I learned some of the differences between Spanish as far as you say, tengo 14 años instead of yo estoy 14 años viejo, right? Which would sound totally weird to say in Spanish. Do you speak Tagalog? No, I don't. Okay, someone's saying coser o tejer son correctas. Okay, I don't know. Tejer or crochetear. All right. Anyways, I thought I learned all of this stuff in Spanish. I did all of my exercises diligently. My workbook is full of Spanish homework that I did this year. I should be able to turn on the Spanish channel and understand at least some of what's going on, right? And so I went downstairs. This was back when we just had cable, that's how you got all of your media. And I turned it on channel, whatever it was, 39 or something, to Telemundo or Univision. I remember those were the two Spanish channels we had, Telemundo and Univision. And I decided I was going to watch some Spanish channel. And I turned that channel on, and I could not understand a single word of what they were saying on the Spanish channel after a year of studying. And I thought, a year of studying isn't that much, but you would think after an entire year of my life, I would be able to understand something. Hola, Jorge. I'm saluton. Hola, Aaron. He says, Hodiao mi crocodilu. Bone. Yeah, I'm just sharing the story of how I learned Spanish, and then eventually we'll get to all the other languages that I learned. Everyone's confused about my crocheting. That's just because, I'm in storytelling mode. It's like sitting around a fire, crocheting, just relaxing, telling stories. All right, so I got to the end of my first year, and I was surprised that after a year, I couldn't understand any Spanish, which is not the way that it should be, by the way. Realistically speaking, if I had been learning Spanish well, and if I had known the correct ways of doing it, I should have been able to spend just a few months learning Spanish and then be able to understand the basics of what was going on the Spanish channel, on Telemundo, when I changed to that channel, right? Problem is, all of the resources we had been using in my Spanish class were designed for children who are non-native speakers of Spanish trying to learn Spanish, and they were very slow and easy, and which is fine. You need to use some of that stuff, but I had just not been prepared for the way native speakers actually speak when they're speaking Spanish. So I did not make nearly the progress that I should have when I was in my first year of learning Spanish. By the way, I mentioned this earlier. I'm sharing my stories. I want to hear you guys' stories too about how you got interested in language learning, about how you struggled and how you succeeded in language learning, what things you tried, and just just tell me your stories in the comment section here. So I'm going to share my stories, and then I'll come back and get to talking about, talking about some of your stories once I share some of mine. Also, I linked below to a playlist. It's nothing but language learners sharing their stories about language learning here on YouTube. I'm starting to pile like sort of a I don't know what you call it, an anthology of language learners sharing their stories, sharing their struggles, their successes, and I call it Storytime Saturday because I release these videos on Saturdays. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of great comments in here, a lot of great suggestions. We're definitely going to get to those and talk about these. But anyways, if you're interested in seeing a large selection of language learners share their stories, go ahead and click down below in the description of where it says Storytime Saturday. It's a collection of language learners sharing their stories. But you can also share your stories here. I see Rafa is already sharing his stories. Excellent. Okay, so that was my first year of learning Spanish. I studied Spanish my last year of middle school, so 8th grade, all 4 years of high school, and then my freshman year of college, I majored in Spanish, or minored in Spanish. I majored in international studies with a minor in Spanish. And I swear, after 6 years of studying Spanish in school, I could not speak Spanish. I knew most of the rules. I could tell you how to form a past tense subjunctive verb. I could tell you, about certain rules that apply to different prepositions, and I could tell you all about the Spanish articles and the gender of articles, which is totally different from English, and how plurals work in Spanish and how adjectives function differently. I could have told you all of these facts about Spanish. The problem was, even with all that knowledge about the Spanish language, I couldn't communicate in Spanish because I had spent all of those 6 years studying Spanish, not actually using the language to communicate. I had spent those 6 years doing exercises, filling in blanks in my workbook, multiple choices. I was preparing for Spanish quizzes and Spanish tests. That was not conducive to actually getting the practice that was necessary to use the language in conversation. Definitely not fluently. Then I joined the Marine Corps. I did 1 year in college and I got bored of class. And so I decided to go do the exact opposite. Went to Afghanistan. Went to Djibouti for several years. And then in 2015, I got out of the Marine Corps and I moved to El Salvador. And right before I moved to El Salvador, I talked to someone who was already fluent in Spanish. All right. And she had lived in El Salvador, and she told me, Aaron, if you spend a year in El Salvador, you should be fluent in Spanish by the end. But not everyone who goes to a foreign country will be fluent in the language after a year. Okay. And at this point, I didn't know a whole lot about learning Spanish. At this point, my entire experience with language learning was sitting in a class, doing exercises, preparing for the quiz, preparing for the final. And we've already established it didn't work for learning a language. So I didn't know what to do. And I distinctly remember I was going to visit my sister at college in Minnesota. And I met this girl who had lived in El Salvador. And she said, you should be able to speak Spanish fluently by the end of this year. But here's what you do. Here's the secret. Don't be afraid of sounding like a fool when you speak Spanish. That was her secret. She said, if you go out of your comfort zone and you're not afraid to speak Spanish, you will learn Spanish, and you will be able to speak, you will be able to communicate in Spanish by the end of the year. Other people who I've met, this is still her words, she's talking about other people that she's met. She says, other people who I've met have lived in El Salvador for years, but they continuously seek out other English speakers to hang out with. They speak English every opportunity they get. They only speak Spanish if they're forced to by circumstances. And they just stay in their comfort zone with other Americans, other United States expats. Yeah, too many choices says crocheting is so relaxing. Exactly. That's why I'm sharing my stories and I'm making a hat. So she says, it's not gonna work if you want to learn Spanish and then you just avoid speaking Spanish. You have to be willing to be. You have to be bold enough to put yourself in difficult situations and speak Spanish, even when you know you're going to say something wrong. You can't be afraid of making mistakes. And that right there was the best advice anyone ever gave me in language learning. Because it wasn't about how many exercises I did. It wasn't how many final exams I prepared for. It wasn't how many workbook sheets I filled out. Learning a language is about using it. You get better at something by doing it. You can't become a pilot after you read a book on aviation. You have to spend tons of hours in simulations and with trained professionals. Okay. And if you never get into an airplane, you'll never learn to fly. If you never get into a swimming pool, you'll never learn how to swim. No matter how, like, you could watch Michael Phelps all day long and study his every move, right? You can listen to his whole training regimen. You can emulate his strokes perfectly. But if you don't get in a swimming pool and try to swim, you'll never learn because it takes muscle memory. And that's what it takes to learn a language too. So that's exactly what I did. I avoided English speakers in El Salvador. In fact, some of my friends who I met down there who were American got kind of mad at me because I would never hang out with them. They would want to go out to get some food, and I'd be like, no, I'm going to go hang out with these Salvadoran friends. And I learned Spanish. After 6 years of failing to learn Spanish by trying to just do all the exercises, doing my homework diligently, and failing, I was able to speak Spanish pretty fluently. We'll say somewhat fluently after about 3 months. Still made a lot of mistakes. Don't get me wrong. Still had that strong gringo accent. And I still do. Not as bad as it was. I still had to ask people, can you repeat that? Sorry, can you slow down? So I'm not trying to make the claim that after 3 months, I was able to sound like a native speaker or pass as a native speaker or anything like that. It was slow and it took, it was a long process. But I was definitely able to communicate and hold entire conversations and joke around and have fun with Spanish speakers after about a month, 2 months, 3 months. Okay. By 5 months, I was very comfortable sitting down with other Spanish speakers and just holding conversations. Okay. Still didn't understand everything. Still to this day, I don't understand everything a Spanish speaker says. Right. Especially depending on what country they're from. Okay. But I don't have, there may be an odd word here or there that I don't understand. Maybe they speak a little bit quickly. Maybe I don't understand their accent. So there's like little details that I might not catch, but you learn to fill in the blanks. You learn to put those together because after you spend a lot of time practicing and using the language, you just get comfortable doing it. And you don't need to catch every little detail in order to understand the bigger picture. Suggestions I'm finding in immersion school in Latin America? I don't know. Like I said, I didn't go to school. It wasn't about classes to me. It was about engaging with friends. Okay, so that was that's how I learned Spanish. And then by the end of that year, I was able to communicate very well in Spanish. I minored in Spanish in high school, in college after that, when I went back to college. And I kept taking classes. And so that was nice for helping me maintain my Spanish. While I was in El Salvador, I also discovered this bizarre language called Esperanto. And one of my friends, we were having so much fun learning Spanish, me and one of my American friends who was down there. I did have some American friends, right? I tried to hang out mostly with Spanish speakers, but I met this other guy, and we kind of bonded over learning Spanish together. We were both very passionate about learning Spanish. We both kind of decided we wanted to keep learning languages even after the year was over. So he brought up, have you heard of this strange language called Esperanto? It's made up. Someone literally just made up this language. And he says, but because it was made up and it was designed to be as easy as possible, it's supposed to be the easiest language there is to learn. And they're releasing a course for this on Duolingo pretty soon. I had introduced all of my friends there to Duolingo because at the time I thought Duolingo was great. I now have mixed opinions about Duolingo. But to their credit, Duolingo was instrumental in my learning Esperanto. And so I had to wait like a month or two while this Duolingo course was in the works. And then they released it in beta, and I want to say June or May of 2015. And I started learning Esperanto immediately that week. And it was pretty crazy. By the end of the week, I was already on chat rooms in Esperanto, having conversations in Esperanto. And I made use of Google Translate and, dictionaries on learnu.com. Learnu.net. I can never remember. But anyways, I threw myself into learning Esperanto. I did some exercises and some grammar study on Duolingo and on Learnu. But then I immediately threw myself into online chat rooms. And by this time I had developed my goal, my philosophy of speak as much as possible. Don't worry about looking like a fool. And just use the language as much as you can. And so I jumped in the chat rooms in Esperanto and I started making lots of mistakes. And I was amazed at how quickly I was able to learn Esperanto. Like, it was really astonishing, partially because it's just such an easy language. Hello, people are wondering if they're too late. No, you're not too late. You're just joining partway through my stories. Other people are mentioning my Learn That Language mug. I had this specially made. It should be available soon on my in the store on my YouTube, on my home page on my YouTube channel. Anyways, that's how I learned Esperanto from the beginning. I did not want to dedicate a lot of time, though, to actively learning Esperanto, because while I was very interested in Esperanto, I found it to be fun. I thought there was more practical, useful languages. Like putting Esperanto on your resume isn't always huge, but if I can put French on my resume, French and Spanish, that's going to look really good. So I started learning French when I came back to America. I stopped actively learning Spanish, started like trying to maintain my Spanish by reading books and stuff like that. And then I started actively learning French. And the only thing that I did to maintain my Esperanto was I created an Esperanto YouTube channel. I should have linked to that below. But anyways, here, I'll put it in the chat. And I'll link to it in the description below later if I remember. It's finctem.esperanto. Okay. That's the name of my channel, Finctem Esperanto. And the only thing I did for like 2 or 3 years to maintain my Esperanto was I would just release videos of myself speaking Esperanto. And lots of people, I'm not sure if Rafa is still here or not, but Rafa, for example, would come on all of my videos and leave me nice little gentle corrections, which is kind of what you need, right? You want people to correct you gently. You don't want people to be overly critical of your language, because at the same time, you have to just say, hey, I'm going to make mistakes. Mi ya mi dinaska lingvo estas Esperanto. Bonege. But anyways, I would tell people in these videos, I'm going to make mi faros filmeton Esperantan, right? I will make an Esperanto video and I will make lots of errors. I'm going to make tons of mistakes. Here's Rafa. He says, Esperantists do love to correct other people, but yeah, it's the best way to learn. Yeah, and I just said right up front, or he says, yeah, Esperantists do love to correct each other. And I just said right up front, I'm a beginner. Mi estás comenzando. I will make lots of mistakes. Please correct my mistakes to help me learn. I'm not afraid of corrections. Okay, it doesn't make me feel bad if you correct a mistake. I would beg for that. And specifically, I can recall, like, I used to say hodiao for today, the word today in Esperanto. And it's not hodiao or hodiao. I don't remember what I would say, but at least 3 or 4 times Rafa commented on my videos. He says, it's not hodiao, it's hodiao. And it took a few videos, but after a while, I started pronouncing it correctly. And so that was the only thing I did to maintain my Esperanto. The other thing that was really beneficial, I only did it once. Well, I've done other smaller events, but I've attended a few Esperanto gatherings, like small gatherings of people. But the one thing that was really, really beneficial to me is when I went to North Carolina last year, to Raleigh, and we had what's called NASC, which is, it's like Esperanto summer school. It's like summer camp mixed with summer school, if you can imagine that. And it's all in Esperanto. And it's full of people who speak Esperanto. And we would eat together, and we would room together, and we would play games together and watch movies, and we would do all kinds of stuff together. We had concerts and stuff, and everything was in Esperanto nonstop. And it was like, I don't know, I want to say 10 days or something like that. Pretty much all English. I would say, no English, I would say we spoke, that weekend I probably spoke 99, probably about 99% Esperanto or more, like maybe 99.5% Esperanto. And I made a really strong effort to not speak any English or other languages while I was at NASC. And that was kind of a strange experience, spending that long of a period speaking only a constructed language. It was really fun. And that was hugely beneficial. I'd say at the end of those 10 days, my Esperanto probably doubled from the point when we had begun. So that's how I learned Esperanto. When I got back from El Salvador, I started learning French. And at first, it was just going to be sort of a dabble because I was planning a vacation in Montreal. And I thought, hey, I'm going to go to a foreign country, and I'm going to learn some of their language. and it'll be interesting. It'll be fun. And I already had this mindset of not worrying about making mistakes and just trying to speak as much as possible. Right. And I thought it'll be a cool experience just to go to a brand new country where I know nothing about the language. I had been to Canada once before, but to the English speaking portion. And Montreal is Quebec is francophone. You can get away with speaking English in Montreal, but I didn't want to do that. So I thought, hey, I'm going to go to Montreal and I'm going to learn as much as their language as I can, and 2-month period leading up to that vacation. But even after that, I had so much fun learning French. I just didn't want to quit, and I really loved Montreal. So that was in 2016, and I made it a point the next year to go back to Montreal, and then the following year again. And I've been there probably 4 or 5 times since. I just keep going back to Montreal. And the way I started learning French was on Duolingo. Okay, for all the negative things I say about Duolingo, it definitely helped. It didn't help me with Spanish really, but it gave me the jump start, like the kick start that I needed to start with Esperanto and also French. I'm seeing here, Rafa says, yay, my persnickety has helped someone. Yes, exactly. Okay, and I swear I'm trying to, a lot of times I just get so caught up in the comment section. I'm trying to keep an eye out for the questions or whatever, but I'll come back to those after I'm done with some of these stories. So I learned Esperanto. I started learning Esperanto on Duolingo. It didn't revolutionize, Duolingo was not the secret to my learning Esperanto. Speaking to other Esperanto speakers was the secret to my learning Esperanto. But Duolingo was the spark that got it started. I don't know if I ever would have jumped into learning Esperanto if it hadn't been for this easy course designed for beginners on Duolingo. So for that, I'm very grateful to them. And the same could probably be said of French. Now, there's a lot more resources for people to learn French than there is for Esperanto. So maybe I would have found something else. But Duolingo is free, so there's no commitment. It's not hard to jump into. You don't have to jump into a monthly payment plan and then you're debating, is it worth it? Is it not worth it? Duolingo is free. So that, to me, made it worth it. And it gave me a basis off of which to start. One of the other really big things I did while learning French was I listened to a lot of French music. And that was great because it helped me internalize a lot of the structure of the French language kind of subconsciously. Rather than studying, well, French is supposed to sound like this, I was memorizing lots of full phrases in the lyrics of French songs. Someone asked, did you learn Greek on Duolingo? Yes, I'm actively doing that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Someone also says, is there any difference between Canada's French and France's French? Yes. It's significant and it's strong. I won't get into it yet, but you can just search for French presso. It's like this. French presso. She's one of my what's her name? Hélène se promène. Is that how you spell it? Anyways, this is one of my favorite YouTubers from French Canada. I'm gonna turn my fan on real quick. It's getting a little warm in here. Okay. So memorizing song lyrics in French was a big help because I was memorizing full phrases. And I always say this, memorizing a phrase in a foreign language is like adding another arrow to your quiver. All right. You're not going to go into battle with an empty quiver. This is talking about way back in the day of Lord of the Rings. Right. But every time you memorize a new phrase, that's a new structure that you've learned. All right. And your native language doesn't have the same structure as your target language. Right. So if you learn how to form a well-formed phrase in your target language, you're going to use that as a model on which to base other phrases that you might want to say. And once you just acquire enough phrases in your memory and enough structures, and once you've internalized those, you're going to be able to say a lot without ever actively learning, word order or how to use certain morphemes and stuff like that. Certain affixes and how to inflect words. Okay, that's just going to start to become more natural once you've internalized that by memorizing lots of phrases. And so music was a huge help for me learning French. I listened to a lot of Zaz, a lot of Edith Piaf. There's some French Canadian like folk bands that I really like. One is called Les Cowboys Fringants. Another one is Bodak Tan. I actually don't know how to pronounce their name. I really like Irish music, and it's interesting because there's a lot of music, like folk music from Quebec that sounds very Irishy to me, like Irish folk music. They use the same kind of instrumentation and stuff. Have you ever heard the word polymath? Yeah, it's like someone who is. Oh, hi Peggy. I haven't seen you in a while. Yeah, polymath is like someone who is interested in a lot of different things and has like a lot of expertise, right? So anyways, the other thing that really helped me with French, I think this really helped my accent a lot, is I bought some Pimsleur CDs, and this is while I was still going to school at UW Milwaukee. And I lived an hour away from my university. And so a Pimsleur CD is half an hour long, and I was able to listen to 2 Pimsleur CDs on my way to school every day. And I wouldn't always listen to 2 because that's a lot of study time in a row. So a lot of times I would listen to a Pimsleur CD for half an hour, and then I would listen to French music for the other half hour. But the Pimsleur was really helpful because it's a native speaker who says something, and then they pause, and they give you the chance to repeat what they said, and you try to repeat it as closely as you can, even though it sounds strange because they use different phonemes in their language, but you try to repeat the sound of their voice as closely as possible. You emulate it as close as you can, and that really helps my accent a lot in French. And French is like notoriously difficult to pronounce a lot of times. They have, Spanish vowels are really easy to learn. A, E, I, O, U. There's 5 of them. Okay. French has like, I don't know, at least a dozen. U, 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 I, right? And there's all these strange ones that I've never heard of before, and I had to get comfortable producing those with my mouth. I had to get that muscle memory down. Peggy says, do you think getting SML Spanish is a bad idea if I want to learn Latin American Spanish? Because SML is Spain Spanish. I've never used Latin. I've never used SML before. I recommend Pimsleur. I can tell you that for dang sure. Latin American Spanish and European Spanish are not that different from each other to the point where it would stop you from being understood or being able to understand people. People ask me this a lot. I don't think it's that big of a deal whether you learn Spanish or Latin American Spanish. It's not that important. And honestly, I would kind of recommend using both. Okay. So that way you're not learning one or the other, but you're getting kind of a mixture and you can understand both. Right. So that could be helpful. Anyways, then after traveling to Quebec 3 or 4 times and using as much French as I possibly could. Do you use italki? Yes, I do. After using as much French as I could in Quebec, after listening to a lot of French music for several years, and after going through, 2 or 3 courses on Pimsleur French, which are, 30 lessons each. So we're talking about 75 hours. I don't know if that's correct. 30 lessons, 30 lessons for each course. So 15 hours per course. So 30 to 45 hours worth of Pimsleur courses. And I listened to each one of those at least 2 or 3 times. So we're talking several hundred hours worth of listening and repeating French from the Pimsleur CDs. After all of that, I decided just for fun, I was going to go in and take the French placement exam at my university just to see what class I would test into because I was curious. And I took the test and I placed into French 303, and I actually had no intention of taking French 303. But then my guidance counselor saw that I had done that, and she said, if you take just 4 more French classes, or you take this French 303 and then like 4 more French classes, you can have a French minor. And I said, yeah, I'll do that. So then French was firmly solidified in my language learning goals, languages that I wanted to learn. And I did minor in French, and I got so I graduated from UWM with a major in linguistics and a minor in French and Spanish. And I had a lot of fun. I also got to go to Paris twice in that time. I went once for an entire summer, and that was really helpful. I went to Paris 3 times. Once was just for a day. And then I learned French. Okay, then I graduated from University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee. And I before I graduated, I knew that I was going to move in Thailand. Can you talk a bit in French? Je peux parler un peu le français. Quand je parle une langue, il me faut quelques minutes pour changer la langue dans ma tête. Alors, je peux pas parler l'espagnol et puis l'espéranto et puis le français. Mais je peux changer entre les langues un peu. Mais si je parle le français quelques minutes ou 1 heure, je parle le français mieux. So it's really hard for me to switch between languages. I'm teaching Spanish lessons, and then I go straight into a Thai lesson. I did that today. I was teaching English lesson to a Spanish speaker from Chile, and then that ended at 9:30, and then starting at 9:30 was my italki Thai lesson, and it's just so hard. And and in between, like every day, I'm doing Pimsleur Greek lessons. So I get to my Thai lesson and I'm trying to speak English to her accidentally, and I'm speaking Spanish, throwing in Spanish words, and then I'm throwing in Greek words from my Pimsleur CDs accidentally, and then I'm also mixing that in with Esperanto that I was just using yesterday in my live stream on my Esperanto channel. But once I talk one language for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, it starts to solidify. And then, if I stick with one language for a few days, then there's no problem. It all comes back. But I have to get into like a language mode. Okay. Natalie says, I understood the French and I'm feeling proud. Good job. I'm always glad to hear that. So anyways, so I minored in French and Spanish. I was taking French class and Spanish class. Oh, that was rough too. I would sit through, an hour and a half of Spanish class, and then I have to go immediately to my French class. And I walk in and I say, hola a todos. I mean, hola a tous. I mean, bonjour tout le monde. And it was just rough going straight from Spanish class to French class. And I had to do that multiple semesters in a row. But I also knew that I had decided I was going to move to Thailand immediately after graduating, and I really wanted to start learning Thai. But the problem was I was already so like overburdened with class and with studying for finals, and I was taking 2 languages at once. And then I thought to throw an extra language into the mix is just going to be too much. I didn't learning 2 languages at once is hard, but 3 is it's tough. I did not want to do that to myself, and I don't recommend anyone do that to yourself unless you're like Moses McCormick and you just have this bizarre brain. But actually, if you watch Moses McCormick's videos, he actually doesn't speak most of his languages very well. That's an overstatement. He speaks most of his languages really poorly. And that's not an insult or a criticism of him, because he has embraced the same philosophy I have embraced, which is you don't worry about speaking perfectly. You just speak. You'll use the language as soon as you can without worrying about making mistakes. You don't worry about sounding like a fool. And to his credit, that's exactly what he does. And he does it really well. So it's not a criticism of him to say that he speaks a lot of languages poorly. Okay, that's what he likes to do. He likes to learn lots of languages. By the way, if you don't know who I'm talking about with Moses, his channel is called Loashu 50500 or something along those lines. He speaks a lot of languages, and I mean like a butt ton of languages, like probably 50 languages or something. But most of them he like barely speaks. And you can tell in his videos, like it's really hard for him. But that's okay. Anyways, as I was saying, what was I saying? Oh yeah, I didn't want to learn more than 2 languages at once. I didn't want to learn more than 2 languages at once. So I waited until after I graduated. I waited until the day after my finals in French and Spanish to start learning Thai. And then I immediately jumped into Thai right away. In fact, I live streamed my first 20 hours of studying Thai. You can go back and watch it. Just watch. It's called like 20 hours learning Thai or something like that. My first 20 hours learning Thai. And I jumped into learning Thai. I completely abandoned Spanish and French for like a year. I just learned Thai nonstop. And I learned to speak Thai probably to at least an A1, A2 level in a month while I was here in America. Okay. Because it was just nonstop studying. I had graduated from college. I wasn't working. I had no other commitments other than just learning Thai. And it goes to show you don't have to live in a foreign country to learn the language. In fact, I meant to say this earlier. Okay, so first I told you guys the story about how I moved to El Salvador and I never learned Spanish until I lived in El Salvador. Okay, don't misunderstand what I'm saying there. With that story, I'm not saying you can't learn Spanish in America or that you must move to a different country to learn Spanish. What I'm saying is my method for learning Spanish in America was wrong, and I didn't adopt a better method until I moved to El Salvador. Okay, and of course, the method that I started using was in the classroom, and that didn't work. I moved to El Salvador, and then just practicing using the language with people got me to improve. And the beautiful thing is you can do that no matter what country you live in. Nowadays, there's lots of apps. You can talk to people from any country in the world. There's italki, there's Hello Talk, there's Interpals, there's Tandem, there's Lingbee, there's Hi Native. There's just all kinds of resources. There's Reddit, there's Telegram, there's WhatsApp. Everything you can think of. You can follow people on Instagram, on Twitter, on YouTube. You can get lots of exposure for free to people in your target language, no matter what country you live in. How many lessons a week should I take for Spanish? There's no number. It's not about lessons that you take. It's about how much you use the language. Okay, that's what I'm saying here. So I took Spanish lessons 5 days a week for 6 years when I was in school, and I didn't learn Spanish. Okay. The really frustrating for me is that while during the like 5 years when I was not learning any language when I was in the Marine Corps, I moved to Djibouti, Africa, for about 6 months. And Djibouti is a country where they speak they speak French and Arabic, and I think other, among other languages. I lived in a French-speaking country for 6 months. Did not learn one word in French. Okay, I'm going to repeat that to you. I lived in a French-speaking country for 6 months, and I didn't learn any French. Okay, a few years later, I decided I was going to start learning French when I lived in America. And over the course of about a month, I learned quite a bit of French in America. You see the contrast I'm drawing here? Lived in the French-speaking country, didn't learn any French. Moved back to America, where I don't know anyone who speaks French, and I learned French. Okay? The longest I've ever been in a French-speaking country was about a month in 2018, and that was after I had already learned French. All right? You don't need to move to the French. You don't need to move to the country to learn the language. You can do it just fine, whatever country you live in already. And that's what I did with Thai. I arrived in Thailand after studying Thai pretty intensely for about a month. And by the time I got there, I had a really good basis in the Thai language. Okay. So the first thing I did when I moved to Thailand, I was going to be a teacher, right? But before I started working, I had a few weeks off that were still left of the summer vacation. So I started going to this Thai school, Thai language school in Bangkok. And I think I went there for about 2 weeks. And every day for 4 hours a day, I would have one-on-one practice with this Thai teacher. And it was all in Thai. And it was really helpful. We didn't speak any English. Well, occasionally we would use one word. When she would say something and I just couldn't get what she was saying, rather than struggling, she would just tell me the word in English. But then I would repeat the word in Thai and try to remember this is what that word means in Thai. And about 4 hours a day of classes with this Thai teacher, speaking only Thai to her, okay, one-on-one. And that was really helpful. The other thing that I would do a lot is I would always try to talk to my cab drivers. I would talk to employees in the restaurant. I used to go to this lady. She had a restaurant right outside my school. Her name was P Pong. Well, her name was Pong, I guess. P is like a courtesy title, sort of. But we called her P Pong. And she was this old lady who would sell me, fried rice and stuff. And I would go to P Pong probably at least 2-3 times a week and buy rice from her, buy, suki or pad thai. I would just sit in her. It was a restaurant, but it was essentially like the bottom floor of her house. And I would just sit in there and talk to P Pong in Thai and talk to the other cooks and family members or whoever. And that was a lot more useful than learning Thai on Duolingo. I just found out this week that Thai, there's no Duolingo course for learning Thai, but there is a Duolingo course for learning English for Thai people, for Thai speakers. So I've been starting doing that. It's rough. It's not designed for people like me trying to learn Thai, but I think it can help. But not nearly as much as just interacting with people in Thai. Okay, that was what was really helpful. I've been trying to go to this Thai restaurant here in America, in my city, um, just to be able to speak to the employees because it's like an authentic Thai restaurant. Haven't gone as much as I want. It's a little bit expensive, so I don't like to go in there too much. But they're the only Thai people in my city that I know of, so I want to get practice speaking Thai. Anyways, now I'm learning Greek. I moved back to America, learning Greek. And this time things are a little bit different. I'm not actually so interested in learning to speak Greek. I'm sorry. I'm not quite as interested in learning to speak Greek because I don't really know if I'll ever go to Greece. It'd be cool if I do go to Greece someday. It's really beautiful from the pictures that I've seen from watching Captain Corelli's Mandolin. Greece looks beautiful, and I think I would like to travel there, but I don't really have any plans of it. And I don't really care too much if I ever learn to speak Greek. I'm more interested in just expanding my language learning mind, trying to learn different languages that are a little bit different from the other Indo-European languages that I've learned so far. And I'm also really interested in just seeing like the connection between Greek words and English words, right? Because a lot of English words come from Greek. And I also have plans of learning ancient Greek sometime in the future. So I am interested in just seeing the connection between ancient Greek and modern Greek, and just it's just an interest of mine because I'm interested in languages and how languages change. So with all that said, it's not really my goal to learn to speak Greek fluently. It's more of an academic curiosity for myself. I am going to try to learn as much Greek as I can, but I'm not dedicated to speaking it. So I haven't actually gone out of my way to speak with a lot of people. I have reached out to some people on Hello Talk. I've done a few posts on Hello Talk in Greek, but mainly I learned Greek on Duolingo. Adios, Peggy. Gracias por ver mi video. Anyways, I've been learning Greek on Duolingo, on Pimsleur. Listen to a Pimsleur CD almost every day, and with Link. So I've been reading the mini stories and repeatedly listening to the audio in Greek. And I think after a while, I probably will hire an italki tutor or try to start doing more talking. But again, for me, learning Greek is not about learning to speak. That's not my goal, and so it's not what I'm doing. All of my other languages, I did want to learn to speak, right? Like I did want to get the practice of communicating with different people. So that's what I did. And that brings me pretty much up to speed. Those are my stories. Like I always say, I am interested in hearing you guys' stories. So I know I missed a lot of questions along the way. But if you still want to share your story of how you became interested in languages, your stories of what you've learned, all that kind of stuff, leave it right here in the comment section. In fact, if you want to view more stories of people just like you who have just run into difficulties and have experiences learning languages, I put a link in the description of this video I call it Storytime Saturday. It's on every once in a while on a Saturday, I'll release a story from someone else who just wants to talk about something that happens to them while learning languages. And then we can learn from each other's experiences, because I think that's important. There's no need to blaze your own trail all the time, right? You can learn from other people's mistakes. Here, Rafa says, mis historias son aburridas. Aprendí italiano y francés tomando clases en mi escuela. Sí viajé a Perugia por un mes con mi clase de italiano, lo que me ayudó mucho a mejorar mi italiano. Yeah, so he practiced, he learned Italian and French in school, which is very difficult to do, by the way. I find language classes to be not that good at learning. They can be helpful, but they should supplement your learning that you're doing outside of class. Don't see it the other way around, right? The learning you do outside of class isn't a supplement to the structured learning you're doing in class. That's backwards. All right, but it's like Rafa says, he says, I traveled to Perugia. I don't know, is that in Italy? I traveled to Perugia for a month with my Italian class, and that helped me a lot to improve my Italian. Right. See, that's how you learn Italian. And then Rafa says, today, 20 plus years after learning Italian and French and after learning Esperanto, I started to actively use it more, reading novels and watching YouTube videos in those languages. Exactly. And then you start to build up just a level of comfortability with those languages. And you start to realize it's okay if I miss a word here or there, if I don't understand every exact morpheme that they used when they're speaking. If I understand the vast majority, I can start to fill in the blanks and understand more or less what's going on. In fact, I usually have no problem understanding exactly what someone was saying, even if I miss 5% of the words that they use, because you can just fill in those blanks very easy and understand what they were saying. And then at the end here, Rafa says, the Italian class was an intensive course, 1 hour a day and 30-minute lab a day with small groups of 4 to 5 where we talked with a native speaker. The entire class was in Italian. Yeah, that sounds about right. You're doing an hour and a half a day entirely in Italian. That's going to help. If you spend an hour and a half a day entirely in Italian, you're going to learn Italian. You're going to start to become comfortable speaking Italian, right? James Alphonse says, soy de Haití, pero hablo español, francés, inglés, y creole. How do you speak? It's not creole in Spanish, right? It's criollo, something like that. So from Haiti, but speaks Spanish, French, English, and Creole. That's great. Yeah, Creole is an English word, right? Isn't it like criollo? Criollo? Hold on. Now I got to go to translate. I'm sure someone will correct me before I find the answer, but I'm not looking at the screen yet. Spanish. Where's Spanish? Criollo, right? Yeah. Like I say, I don't always remember every word in Spanish. Sometimes I run into words. Oh, hi, Hillary. Thanks for joining. He says, when did you start knitting? I wasn't expecting to see that. Yeah. So I'm crocheting a hat. And I started learning to crochet. Actually, believe it or not, I started learning to crochet while I was in the Marine Corps. So in defiance of all the stereotypes of what Marines are like. Yeah, but I actually have a Instagram titled Straight Dude Knitting, and I post just things that I've knit and things that I've crocheted. I mostly crochet, but Straight Dude Crocheting just didn't sound quite as good, so it's called Straight Dude Knitting. In fact, I made all of these. Here's a little zombie. I made this zombie because my next language learning book is going to be about zombies. I think my Little Dragon book was great for language learners, but it looks like a kid's book. So I think the next one I'm going to make it the same style of story, but I'm going to make it about zombies, so it looks more like it's for adults, which the other one was as well. Okay. Si es criollo. Thank you for being straight. Oh, I thought I didn't understand what you meant there. I thought you meant thank you for like giving it to us straight, for talking straight. Yeah, so that's my stories about how I learned all those different languages. It's not easy. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot more than just doing exercises. In fact, I got this thing in here. I got this little Family Feud thing. I decided I'm going to start a new ritual on my live streams where when I talk to someone who is like, I need to do more exercises, or what textbook should I use or something. I'm going to say, no, wrong. It's not about doing exercises. It's not about studying grammar. It's about getting exposure to the language. Okay. Listen to music, watch TV shows, listen to podcasts, and most importantly, talk to people, interact with other human beings. Okay. Exercises, wrong. It's communication. It's get yourself used to talking, get yourself used to using the language, right? If you're gonna, I don't know, if you want to start cutting down trees, you don't just pick up the chainsaw that you've never used before, right? You got to get used to using the chainsaw. You cut down little branches. Pretty soon you're comfortable with it. You know how to use it. You know exactly how much pressure to put down. You know how much it can take. You get used to it, okay? You don't study a book you don't watch a YouTube video on how to cut down a tree. You practice. You become comfortable doing it, okay? That's what it is. Hillary says, I read El Dragoncito to my son to practice reading Spanish and to help him to hear Spanish spoken. Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's a book. It looks like a kid's book, right? And it is for kids. Like, it's for kids. It's for adults. It's kind of a juvenile story, but it's meant to help people learn languages. But that's why I'm just saying, I think I learned for the next one, a lot of people just had mentioned, it's a great thing for learning Spanish, a great thing for learning French, but I want an adult story. So the next one's going to be more along the lines of, it's going to be The Walking Dead for language learners. Not really. Anyways, I think I'm going to cut this off here. If you want to see more videos of people sharing their stories about how they learned languages, take a look in the description below for the little link there. It's people who are sharing their stories about what went right, sharing stories about things that they did wrong, okay, mistakes that they made that you can avoid, and things that just from their experiences, okay, positives, negatives, difficulties. Peggy wants me to play guitar. I don't normally do that, but I'll play you a little bit if it's even in tune. I haven't played this in a while. I'll play you guys a farewell. Goodbye, and I'll see you all next week.